Well guys, after 11 in-game years and 300 hours of gameplay time, I think it's time we finally have a bit of a review time of Farming Simulator 25 and, well, Riverbend Springs, which is where we're right now. During that 300 hours plus 11 in-game years, we've started from a small farm and built our way up to something a little bit more on the sizable side, and it even included its very own commercial district. I'm just saying, we've gone a little bit crazy on this farm build. We've had a chance to mess with all the new crops, and of course all the old ones as well. So we've got thoughts on all of this, guys. So gather around the campfire. I'm gonna give you my thoughts on where we're at with Farming Simulator 25 and maybe a little bit of what we got to look forward to, where we are now and what's coming in the future. Let's start with, well, the map itself. This is Riverbend Springs, guys. This is the North American map for Farm Sim 25. Of course, there is an Asian map as well that is came along with our two base maps, along with Zelonka, which was the premium map for Farming Simulator 22. The map itself, guys, is actually very nice. It's one of my favorite base game maps. Definitely ranks up there along with, well, Elm Creek, I would say. It definitely does strike a nice difference between smaller fields and medium-sized fields. One thing I will say, there are no real large fields on this map. In fact, this here is the largest field that we've had to create, and this is the biggest you can pretty much get without, well, destroying roads, like concrete roads, not just regular dirt roads. This one here was 3 fields that we've made into 1. Now, of course, there's trains that go through the middle of town, but the big feature is the ferry system. There's 2 ferries that cross the river, which is totally new to Farming Simulator. They're kind of interesting and neat to use every once in a while. Of course, there's a variety of sell points and production plants already placed here in Riverbend Springs. But more notably, actually, there's 2 other interesting features, one just over top the ridge here. And those are the buildable, I don't know, buildings, the buildable missions almost. They're kind of like side quests where you bring various different productions to them and they will build over time. Now, this one here is the museum. Unfortunately, at launch, it wouldn't allow you to complete it. Now, my understanding is it does work now. However, with old game saves that we're running on like right now, it didn't fix the problem with the update. The second buildable production is the playground maker, which we haven't completed as of yet, but you can see we're working on it right now. Maybe we'll get that done at some point. Now, as for my thoughts on both of these buildable productions, they're both interesting and kind of fun to do as little side quests, but I guess my bigger problem is you don't really want to harvest the wood yourself to do this. The amount of work required to do that yourself is kind of astronomical. So from what I've seen and what I've done, you end up just buying everything. Now, of course, you could go and do your harvest your lumber and go through the sawmill and make all the products you need yourself. However, the amount you would require, guys, is kind of ridiculous. So what I've been doing is just buying everything at the warehouse for the most part. Yeah, pretty much everything, guys, has just been bought at the warehouse. So it ends up being just a money transfer system to finish these side quests more than anything. To be honest, I don't know how you'd fix it. I get that you need a lot of wood for this stuff, but I just really don't like the way that system works. It seems kind of, I don't know, it feels kind of cheap to me. Now, of course, we also had a chance to try all our new crops, the peas, spinach, and green beans, which have been added into Farming Simulator 25. And of course, what I would call the headlining act, we have our rice, our 2 different types of rice as well. Of course, we've had to give those a shot. And to be honest, guys, all those crops do seem quite nice. However, it does seem like you need to focus in on either of those crops if you decide to go with it, just because of the cost of the equipment. Now, rice actually is a fairly manageable crop for relatively low cost. You can get into rice. So these crops here, yeah, easy to get into for the most part. Not a huge cost to get involved with rice. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for your spinach, your green beans, or your peas, because they all require specialty harvesters that are rather expensive. So if you're going to do these crops, you tend to need to, well, really go headfirst in on it and buy the equipment. Of course, the rest of our crops are back again. Our standard wheat, barley, oat, canola, sorghum, all those are back once again. Even our cotton, poplar, if you decide to go with the more lesser known crops, I guess, or lesser utilized crops. And they all act for the most part the same. Now, just a heads up, once again, it seems like Farm Sim 25 is very similar to our past farming simulators because while many of their crops are still great, silage is still king at making money early on in game. If you want to make money earlier on, silage is probably the best bet for you because you get multiple harvests and there's just different ways you can harvest it, whether it be bales like we have here or a silage pit or whatever else you desire to do. But there's a lot of different ways to get silage, and it tends to be one of the more profitable ways, at least early on in game. Now let's talk well, base game equipment. And to be honest, guys, I don't want to dwell too much on this because, quite honestly, this is one of the best parts about Farming Simulator, but I will mention a few things. Guys, there is a decent variety of base game old equipment and, of course, plenty of new stuff that you can use to add on to your farm. Yeah, to be honest, guys, I really have no huge complaints about the equipment that is available. It is lacking a little bit. I feel like some of the options seem less than normal. For instance, our wheel loaders, it feels like we're missing, for instance, a New Holland. But there are reasons for that, and it comes down to the new crops is the way I look at this. We have plus, 400 pieces of equipment now? But unfortunately, since we have all these new crops that are now in Farming Simulator, we also have a bunch of new equipment that is very specialized for those crops which are taking up spots. So each one of these, for instance, spinach, green beans, pea harvests, our new vegetable harvesters that was part of the premium DLC in Farm Sim 22, they're all taking up spots now. We've got rice down here as well. All these pieces of equipment are taking up spots, which, well, kind of means it takes it away from, well, our medium tractors, our large tractors, our small tractors, and we have less variety. However, the in-game Modhub is getting really stocked very quickly, I should say. Since the new year's been here, guys, our mods have been coming in pretty fast and furious. So make sure you're checking this on the regular, basically, to make sure you're getting all the mods you want to, well, fill out the categories. So it's not that the actual overall amount of equipment is lacking. It's just that, well, things have thinned out a little bit in certain categories, which is being supplemented by the Modhub. Let me know what you guys think about that, the fact that we have to supplement stuff in the Modhub. Now, with that being said, a lot of these are Giants mods that are being put out in the Modhub, guys. So these are from past games. They just didn't make it in the base game, and now they are, well, they're in the Modhub and making their way into Farm Sim 25. Moving away from our crops, we also have productions which have been brought back in from Farm Sim 22 back into Farm Sim 25 as well, and they allow us to have all sorts of different productions we can make from our farm products to our heart's content. You can really kind of go wild with this stuff, guys. I'm not sure how I feel about it quite yet. It's something I don't use all the time, but it has worked out fairly well, and there's been a nice little addition, actually. Rather than going with the massive, large commercial complexes and buying them up, you can now place down mini productions on your farm, which kind of do the same thing at a very much slower rate. Pretty much slower rate, very much slower rate, extremely slower rate on some of them, but regardless of which, they all seem to work all right, and it allows you to do productions at a small scale right on your farm rather than having massive buildings at quite a discounted rate too. And of course, along with those productions, we also have warehouses for, well, storing all our goods like our bales, and of course, all the production goods so you can sell them at the optimal time. And since we're talking about productions, guys, I'd be amiss if I didn't talk about greenhouses, as well, we've got a bunch of new options here on productions for greenhouses, including a whole new mushroom greenhouse system, which is completely new. So you got that. And then, of course, new productions out of our original greenhouses, some other products that we were not normally getting in previous games. So, yeah, both nice little additions there. So included in Farm Sim 25 is a new terrain deformation model that allows your terrain to deform depending on what equipment's driving, based on the weight and the ground type you're driving on. So have your tractors, you'll see, will sink into fields, especially when it's wet, where light trucks may not sink in as much, but you'll still get some tracks will be formed from it. So the new system, ground deformation, kind of neat to see, to be honest with you. I really do enjoy it. It does make things feel a little more realistic. There's more bumping around for sure. They do disappear after a little while. I'm not exactly sure what the times are, but regardless of which, it is nice to see. Now, as far as vehicles handling, a lot of vehicles handle, well, the same as they have in the past. They're fine. Now, there are some that handle better, and there are some vehicles to, well, to say the least, don't handle well at all. Not mentioning any names, but yeah, this International, guys, is just terrible for the handling. I don't know what they were thinking with this one. Now, the other big feature, of course, was the addition of GPS for your equipment. Fantastic little settings we can change to just having steering assist mode. So it will set up lines for you so you can just activate it and it'll steer for you down those. Or you can set up AI workers now to do headlands and go all the way around your courses as you desire. So another big feature that was finally brought into Farming Simulator 25 to give it a simulated GPS, at least to some degree. So that is great to see. Really does help out, especially console players. I know, fantastic to have this feature brought in. Really excited to have this. Get going, get out of here. There we go. Go to your headlands. There we go, that's better. And our last big feature, of course, were weather effects. which really go a long ways to, well, starting to damage crops now, as you can see below, from hail. And even we have blizzards now with a different mod that's out there. It's making life a little bit interesting, as I have not been taking care of these crops, obviously. Look at the damage to these things. This is ridiculous. Of course, the big one is the tornado. However, it seems like it's few and far between. Let me know in the comments if you guys have gotten a tornado in your game. We have not had one on the 10 years of this. However, we have seen tornadoes in game. It's just not on this playthrough. And lastly, guys, we have livestock to talk about as well. For the most part, they go somewhat unchanged. However, we do have different ages of animals now. You can see we've got some calves here. There's probably some yearlings in here, and of course, the full-grown heifers as well. Also, there's some additions. We also have goats and, what is it, water buffalo now as well? So that's always a nice little thing to see. We have more options now. However, most of them are very similar to, well, the same pens that you would find. For instance, water buffalo will go in here, and then our goats will go in our sheep pen. So you've got similar animals, but just a little bit different. Nice little additions. You can kind of customize how you want to do your farms, I guess. So definitely not complaining to have more options there. And now leaving our farm, guys, we need to talk quickly just about the build mode itself. I mean, it has allowed us to build this entire farm pretty much from scratch. There are a decent amount of sheds and different buildings in base game. However, of course, waiting for the Modhub to fill up with different things. That is where you're going to see a lot more, of course, going forward. But yeah, moving terrain slopes, adding fences, decorations, that kind of stuff. It seems very similar to previous games if you haven't seen it before, but like this was a field beforehand that we just managed to build up a parking lot area, some sheds, the warehouse, and of course our production row up here. So this is all stuff you can do yourself in game. Relatively easy for the most part. There's some nice mods out there already that will actually help you with all this stuff. So the build mode is very similar to what it's been in the past. Nothing crazy to expect there. One thing, I would love to see more painting schemes come in base game. Fortunately, mods are already being released where we're getting additional paint schemes, which is nice to see, but base game, there's just not enough. Let's see more of those. Lots of trees, lots of plants already. Yeah, nothing wrong with this at all. I'm pretty happy with this. Got to see what else we can push with the actual build mode on farms going forward. So as for my final thoughts, guys, has Farming Simulator 25, well, blown me away? I wouldn't say it's blown me away. Let's be honest. It is still very similar to Farming Simulator 22. There are some nice new things. There's some things that still feel like they're broken and need work, but for the most part, I'm happy with where we're at right now. Once again, I feel like Riverbend Springs is the better of the maps that are available at base game. I do enjoy the map. Could use some bigger fields, and that does bring me to another point where there's no real large fields on any of the base game maps, even if you combine them. So I'm not quite sure yet what we're going to do with the first DLC package, which is the Nexat. It does feel like a very strange choice to have that as our first DLC package when none of our fields are really designed to have something that large in them in any of the base game maps, but I digress. That's what we're getting to start with. At least make sure you pre-order it down in the description if you want to get a copy of with the Nexat pack coming in just like a couple weeks here by now, actually. But I mean, other than that, no big fields. Like I said, the map itself does feel like it's alive. The fields are different shaped. Lots of terrain elevation changes. I love the river that goes through it. The train goes through it. It feels like it's a living, breathing town, and I do appreciate that. It does live up to the hype that I would have for the North American map, similar to what Elm Creek was in Farmington 22 for me. So yeah, very happy with this map. But unfortunately, that's kind of a problem as well because, guys, once you're done playing with this map, I don't know where you go to from here right now. The Modhub has been very slow to release new maps, and quite honestly, it's tough to find ones you're going to want to play right now. We're in February. Hopefully, I was hoping by January we'd have a lot more maps. Yeah, there's not much else out there yet, and I feel like I'm almost done with this map. So realistically, guys, the features are all in the game that I want to see, to be perfectly honest. Love all the stuff that's coming out for different features in the Modhub, but where this game is going to shine is ultimately down to what modders are able to make for new maps going forward in Farming Sim 25. That is really what we're going to have to wait on now. Hopefully we see some new maps and new areas that we haven't seen necessarily before, because Riverbend Springs and our Asian map, that's not going to be enough going forward. Don't get me wrong, they're both great starter maps, but once you have a couple 100 hours into one, it's time for a refresh, I think, right? The guy in the cage, I think, has more hours in Farm Sim than I do. Lost his boot. So as for final thoughts, guys, like I said, nothing kind of blew me out of the water. It's a solid game as is. If you played Farm Sim 22, you pretty much know what you're getting into in Farm Sim 25. If you've never played a farming simulator game before, you really can't go wrong with Farming Simulator 25. You will be able to pick it up, learn from it. The tutorial menus will help guide you through on what you need to do. And of course, you can stay tuned to the channel here and get some ideas on how to play Farming Simulator 25. We'll help you out where we can. So there you guys go. There's my thoughts after 300 hours in Farm Sim, at least on this playthrough. We're probably closer to 400 hours in total. I need to figure out where to go to next still, but I've really been enjoying Riverbend Springs, to be perfectly honest, but I think we need something a bit bigger next time. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this. Of course, get subscribed to the channel if you want to see more Farm Sim 25 content. Drop a like on the way out, and I will catch you guys in the next one. This is Klutch. Over and out.